Hello everyone. Today we're going to be talking about arrays and loops. So, we have a problem in coding. And rather than again reading off this slide, I don't have to go on these slides. Let's hop on to playcode.io and then just start coding from here. I'm going to get rid of this and delete that and then move this up. So we have a problem in coding. Let's say we wanted to make a shopping list. I can say item 0, or sorry, let's item 0 equal, let's say you need lettuce, you're gonna buy lettuce, and then let's item 1 equal, and then you're buying bread, and then let's item 2, and you can see how long this is taking to make a shopping list. And if you want to change every item in the shopping list, it would take forever. Let's say our third item is milk. So we have these three items, and even though we only have three items, it took forever to write out. So there's a problem. This is our problem, and arrays is how coders solve this problem. Let's look at the slide real quick. So an array is just a list of items, right? Yeah, a list of items, and one can yeah, okay, and the only like caveat to this list of items is that they all have to be the same type. So you can't you have to include all strings, or like some strings and an integer or something like that. And arrays have indexes, right? Which is just the place an item is in. And an index is like the label. And in coding, we like to start counting from 0. So let me show you what I mean. Let's create an array like right here. Let's shopping list. I'm using the example from the slide. Let shopping list equal. We can just say lettuce. Or, I don't care about the capitals. Lettuce, bread, and milk. So this is our shopping list, right? And you'll notice they're all the same data type, as in they're all strings. And in coding, right, how would we access one of these items? Let's say we wanted to log one of them to the console. Well, if I wanted to log lettuce, I wouldn't actually type in, I wouldn't like tell my computer I want the first item. I would tell my computer I want the 0th item. So the 0th item is lettuce, which means bread is the first item, right? We could try that. And that milk is the second item. So we started counting from 0. Now, if I wanted to find the length of this list, right, I would just log it to the console, shopping list, and then dot length. By typing dot length, we get the length of the list. So we can do this on any list we want. Let's say we had another list. Let games, or actually, what other common ID cards equal 662 18723 blah blah blah. We have some ID numbers here. I'm just typing random numbers. And if you wanted the length of this list, you would log to the console ID cards dot length. And I have 4 items in here. Alright, so what's next? Well, we have some more information about arrays here, like how we access them. Again, we type in the square brackets, right? The square brackets, if you can't find them on your keyboard, by the way, they're next to the P key, right? IOP, and then come the square brackets. They're under the curly brackets, and we'll get to the curly brackets a little bit later. You already know how to use them in if and for. But they have other uses, and so you have these square brackets, and to access to create a list, you write square brackets and commas. You separate each item with a comma, and then in order to get one of the items, you use square brackets as well as the index, right? And yes, you can also log the entire array. Now, what if you wanted to add something to these lists? Well, there's 2 ways to do it. Let me get rid of this part. And one of the ways, well, first of all, we can change one of the items. Let's say we want to change the first item. from bread to um, let's say just candy, right? So if we log the entire list to the console, you'll notice you'll notice really, Luke. You'll notice that the bread changes to candy because we changed the first item, not the zeroth item, but the first item. And also, if we wanted to add something, well, we could say shopping list of 3, right? Equals a new item. We can make it I can't even think of what I eat. Cheese, right? Let's say we make cheese, and then we log this to the console one more time, and you'll see, hey, now we have cheese in our list, right? We changed the third item, right? Not the fourth, but the third item, because we're including 0. We changed it to cheese. But there, let's say you don't know what the last item you just put in is, right? You don't know what place is the last item. So you could type in shopping list of shopping list.length, right? And then change this to the new item, right? New item. And then if I log this to the console, you'll notice that it's the next item. But this is kind of long. You have to type out like shopping list.length inside, right, of the index, just to give it a new item. But there's an easier way to do this, and the easier way is to type in shopping list.push, and then give it a new item, newer item. And let's log this to the console one more time, so that we can see what's inside of our list, and you'll see it just attaches the newer item at the end of the list. Now, what if you wanted to remove some items? Well, the dangerous way of doing it, I guess, is to type in shopping list of 0 equals null. This is a rather dangerous way of doing it, but we can see, we can log this to the console and see what it looks like. And we have this null object here now. Now let's not do that. Actually, that's a really bad way of doing it. We can the better way to do it is to type in shopping list.pop, and you'll notice it gets rid of the last item. Now, so what if you wanted to get rid of the first item? Then you would type in shopping list.splice, and then the index that you want it to remove. Let me just check this. Oh, I accidentally deleted everything. All right, 0 and then 1. Let's try that. Yeah. So this index is the one you want, the item you want to cut out. The first item that you want to cut out. I wanted to cut out lettuce, and then this next index is the last item. So splice actually cuts out a bunch of them, right? Starting from this index and then ending just before this index. What I mean by that is, like, let's say this was 2, then splice would get rid of 0 and 1, right? Just before 2, right? It doesn't remove 2, but it goes just before 2. So if I put 3, then it would cut out 0, 1, and 2. And if I put 1, it just cuts out 0. So that's splice. You can remove items from a list using splice. And don't set things equal to null. Alright, let's look at some loops. This is going to be a rather short lesson, actually. So what if you wanted to repeat something a bunch of times? Now that we know how to make a storage, right, a storage device, an array that can contain a bunch of items, what if you wanted to repeat something on a bunch of the items? Well, here's one way to do it, and it's a while loop. Let me go down here, move all the way down. Let me create a while loop. So we're going to create a counting variable, right? I'm just going to call mine I. So I equals 0, right? Let I equals 0. Oh, 0. And then while I is less than, say, 10, then let's log I to the console. Oh, and my computer froze. Alright, my computer crashed several times, so I'm going to click pause here, and I think that'll stop my code from constantly updating itself and crashing itself. But we'll just see, I guess. So let's talk about the while loop. Let's start with creating a counting variable, something simple like I. Let I equal 0. And now we can increase or decrease I depending on how we want to loop through our items. So let I equal 0, and then I'm going to say while I is less than 10. Just a small value. We're going to increase I. And you'll notice my console isn't updating because we haven't logged anything yet. Now I want to log I to the console, and we'll see what that looks like. Or I'm gonna increase I after we log it. Alright, let's try it. Okay, alright, and you'll notice it logs from 0 to 9. Now let's go through this. I starts at 0, right? And while repeats something as long as whatever is inside the parentheses, as long as this is true. So as long as I is less than 10, we're going to do these things. We're going to repeat them over and over and over again. So first we log I. Since I started at 0, we get 0. Then I increases, right? I goes to 1. Then we keep going. It goes to 1, and this repeats. We log I again, and then we keep going until we hit 9. Now we log I, right? So that I is now 9, and then we increase I to 10. Now, before we restart, we check it, right? We check, hey, is this condition still true? And I is no longer less than 10. It is 10. So we don't log it at 10. Now, you might want to say, hey, well, don't you want to do I is less than or equal to 10? So that you can get from 0 to 10? Well, actually, no. And I'll show you why. Hold on. All right, so let's say we have our shopping list again. Let's make our shopping list again, shopping list, and then set that equal to... Oh, I forgot that. I'm sorry. I've been working on Python recently. All right. We're gonna get lettuce, right, and then bread, lettuce, bread, and milk. All right. So lettuce, bread, and milk. Now, what if I wanted to go through every single one of these items? Well, instead of less than 10, I'm gonna type in shopping list dot length. So now it goes from 0 to 1 to 2, right? Because there are 3 items. The length is 3, which means I goes from 0 to 1 minus the length. Now, instead of logging I want to log shopping list of I with the index I. And you'll notice this logs all of my items. Now, this isn't very useful if we're just logging them to the console, because I could just log the entire list, right? I could just console.log shopping list. But let's say you wanted to add something to all of these items, or you wanted to add them all together or multiply something. Now you have a way of looping through the list and doing something with it. So, yeah, that's the while loop. I'm going to go over the for loop. So it's for counting, right? For loops make counting through an array shorter and cleaner. It has the same elements as the while loop, but packs it into one line. So let's look back at our code. Our code looks like this. We have around, I'm going to delete this line. We have around, if I delete this space, around 4 lines, right, to loop through the entire array. I bet you we can do it shorter, right? And so we could do it shorter using the for loop. For, when you type in for, you first type in a counting variable. I'm going to use j instead. I and j are very common counting variables. So that j equals 0. J is less than shopping list dot length, and then j plus plus. All right, and you'll notice, right, if this has the exact same structure as this while loop, right? We started out by creating a counting variable, then we set a condition, right? We checked as long as it's less than the length, and we increased it, right? We incremented it. Now you can change any of these. You can have j start at 10. You can have it start at the shopping list dot length, and then go down as long as it's greater than 0. And then you could decrease j. There are a bunch of ways you can mess around with this, but the result is about the same. You just log shopping list of j instead. Now there's another way to do this. I think here's how you type it. I don't remember exactly. For let's say item in shopping list, and then you log item. Nope. Okay. So it's not in. It's actually a for item of shopping list. So when you type for item of shopping list, instead of creating this counting variable, it actually creates. It actually just uses the item, right? So it starts with the lettuce, and then it goes to bread, and then it goes to milk. Instead of starting at 0, then going to 1, then going to 2. And notice here, you're not actually creating the variable. You're not saying let item, and that's because JavaScript is so smart. It knows that you're creating the variable called item anyways. But you should. It's up to you whether or not you want to include the let. And then here's an example. So I'm gonna go over the example right now. So you can create an empty list, right? Empty, or like numbers list, right? And then start out as empty, and then you could push a bunch of items into the list. So for I'm gonna put 100 items inside of the list. I is less than I equals 0. I is less than 100, and this will run 100 times, and then I plus plus, and I'm going to go ahead and generate some random numbers. So I'm going to say let random number equal math.random times 100. Now, okay, what does math.random actually do? It doesn't create a random number, right? It actually creates a random number between 0 and 1. So you might get like 0.15. And in fact, why don't we just log some of these to the console? Or actually a bunch of these. It's going to log a bunch. Ready? Okay, yeah, you see it starts at 0.57, and I multiplied by 100 to get it to 57 point something something something. So now that we have that number, let's go ahead and floor it. Let random integer, I'm going to say set this equal to the random number, or sorry, math.floor of random number. Now, why did I do that? And if I didn't, I'm gonna get rid of this log because it's lagging out my computer a bunch. But when I say random integer, I mean I want whole numbers, right? Or 0, right? I don't want like 57.07291 whatever. That'll be too complicated. So I want whole numbers, right? I want integers. And so if I say math.floor, flooring a number just gets rid of the decimal. So it doesn't round. If it's 5.9, it'll actually make it 5 instead of 6. And there is a rounding function, but or you can make your own, but I'd rather not. So I just decided to use floor instead. So I created a random number, right? Between 0 and 1. I multiplied it by 100, and then I floored it. And you can actually combine both of these lines by just taking this, tossing it inside of here, and then deleting this line. And so I'm actually going to do that. And then I'm going to push this inside of the numbers list. So numbers list that I created earlier, I'm going to push this inside random integer, the random integer I created. And in fact, you can go even further to shorten this further. You just take this and plop it into here. And one neat thing about this is obviously you have less lines of code now, but it's harder to read. So it's up to you. I'm going to leave it like this because I have the slide with the explanations and everything, and I just explained it now. Hopefully you understand this, but to another coder, this might not make sense. So you want to break it down step by step. Either add a bunch of comments, or you can create a bunch of variables, and then one by one move down. But this is the shortest way to do it, so I'm just going to leave it as that. Now, we want to go through this list for let's j equals 0, j is less than numbers list.length. You could also use 100 here, right? But just in case I change this number, this 100 over here, I want to not have to change both of these, right? So you can use 100 here because you already have 100 items in the first list. But again, I'm going to leave it as numbers list.length. And then I'm going to increase j, and that means we're going through every item in j. And if let's say we want even numbers that are greater than 50, right? Let's say, okay, so if numbers list of j, right, we're checking the number. If it's greater than 50, and this is the and sign, and also if numbers list of j modulus 2, as in if it's an even number, is it equals 0, right? If it's the remainder of it being divided by 2, if it's 0, that means it's an even number, then we're going to let it be. But if not, right, and I could just include the not sign after wrapping all of this, right? If it's not one of these, we want to splice it. We want to get rid of it, okay? So how do we get rid of it? Well, you can, again, remember the splice function, right? Numbers list of j dot splice splice of between j and j plus 1. Now, something's wrong with this code, and I'm going to tell you right off the bat, and why it won't work. The reason this won't work is because as you're looping through the array, if you take out an element, the entire rest of the array shifts. So let me give you an example. Let's say you're looking at 0, 1, and 3. This simple, okay, all right, 1, 2, 3. This simple array. So let's say you splice 0, right? You splice the 0th element, right? 0, 1. You're looping through the array and you splice 0, 1. Okay, so I is at 0 right now, and then you spliced 0, 1. So now your list is, or your array is 2, 3. Now I goes to 1 now, right? It started at 0, now it's at 1. But the thing is, if you go to 1, you're looking at 3. And if you're looking at 3, then you just skipped over 2. Again, if you're looking at it if you're looking at it from left to right, you look at each number, you first check 0, then 1, then 2. As you're doing it, if you take away 1, then you'll skip over 2. So we're gonna have to find another solution to this. And one of the solutions is to create a new array, and I'll show you what I mean. So instead of removing elements if the number doesn't follow these conditions, let's add them to a new list if they do follow the conditions. So I'm going to create a new list. Let even, I called it even greater 50. So I'm going to set this to that, and then instead of, again, splicing from the old one, I'm going to push, I'm going to go to even greater 50 dot push. I'm going to add to this new array, this empty one, the number if it follows. So push numbers list of j. So now let's look at this code, and I'm actually going to push this to the side, so hopefully you can read it, all this code. All right, so yes, I create a list of 100 random numbers between 0 and 100. Then I loop through them, right? And then I take the ones that are greater than 50 and even, and then I store them in a new array. This new, this new array. So we still have this old array of the 100 numbers, and we have a new array containing the items that we want. So that's an example of looping. And I will do another example of looping after this. Excuse me. Let's review first. So let's review. What is an array? Well, it's a way that we can store a bunch of items in organized and contained fashion. And as long as all the items are in the same data type, then we're good. Arrays have indexes, which are like the label for them, and it stands for where the place of the item is, right? So the index actually starts at 0th place. And we can use indexes to pick which value or which item we want in the array, and then we can either look at it, log it, or change it. We can also add new items using push, and also we remove items using splice. And using indexes out of the bounds of the array can get weird. And I will show you what I mean after this. We can create null values. And also looping through the array can be done using a while loop and a for loop, right? The for loop is more optimized for looking through all the elements of an array and has a bunch of different versions, right? Like the for item in array. So let's get some practice in before we end this lesson. And I'm actually going to teach you guys something new during the practice. So some new stuff that that came up. earlier, or might have come up. Okay, so let's create this array, right? That's small, or okay, let numbers equal, 1, 3, 2, 6, 2, and then so we have 4 items here, which means the last place is third, right? 0, 1, 2, 3. What if I tried to log the fourth item, numbers of 4? Well, you'd get undefined, right? We didn't give it a fourth item. We gave it 0, 1, 2, and 3, right? Up to a third item. Now, what if instead we tried to change the fourth item? We can change numbers of 1, right, pretty easily to like 5, 4. But what if we changed numbers of 4 to 4? Oh, sorry, 5 to 4. Even if you set 4 to 4, it would work. But what if you set 5 to 4? Let's log the entire array to show you what I mean. If you tried to, oh man, that's really ugly. Let's move this back. If you try to change one that's like extending out, you'd stick an undefined value in between. So we have 0, 1, 2, and 3, which we created at the beginning. Then we have the fourth place that we didn't ever define, and then a fifth place for number 5 that we gave a 5. So yeah, you want to be careful with that. All right, now the final practice, we're gonna work on making, I guess, like a calculator. Yeah. Thank you guys for listening, and have a good one. Keep on coding.